Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Point Podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Happy Labor Day as we are here in the September 5th, the September long weekend. And we're here this morning because there's a lot to get into. First off, it's NFL week. We have made it to week one of the NFL. It starts on Thursday. It's been a long wait. February, to be exact, February 14th was the last NFL game, the Super Bowl, and I've been waiting for this day to come back. I got some relief this weekend with college football, which was crazy at times. Last night's game was unbelievable between LSU and Florida State, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the AFC West, going to preview the last division. I got my top 32 quarterback list coming out tomorrow on the show. Wednesday, I'm going to reveal every division winner that I see. I'm going to predict an MVP, Super Bowl. So every big prediction. Thursday, we'll preview the Thursday night game, the opening night game of Buffalo, Los Angeles Rams. And then Friday, as always, Big Money Friday, and we're going to do over-unders for win totals for each team, each division. We're going to go through that. We're going to go over the games of the weekend. We're going to do some of that Saturday as well to go through each game, money line, things of that nature. So that's what's on the docket for this week. NFL heavy. As we move forward here, of course, we're going to keep track on all the other things happening in the sports world. And something that, I've watched a lot of college football this weekend, which I'm sure surprises a lot of you. But the U.S. Open has been fantastic. If you're not watching tennis right now, I feel for you because it's been fantastic, a fantastic product. There's been spectacular moments. Friday night, it was appointment viewing until the end. Serena Williams loses against Anna Tomljanovic, who is now into a quarterfinal after she wins last night in straight sets. But that match was the perfect way for Serena to go out. If the label of that match, well, Serena just ran out of gas. Okay, sure. People that don't like Serena Williams can label it. That's the match. That's the way it goes. Okay, fine. Great. She still has 23 Grand Slams. You will have to get past that. Someday you'll have to get over the fact that she's just that great. I look at that match. She saved 6 set points in her last game that she ever played. She battled the whole way. They had 8 20-plus point rallies in the match. She's 41 years old. Tomljanovic had 2 14-minute service games in the match that included the final one. Not to mention, Tomljanovic saved 4 set points in the second set and still ended up losing it, which is crazy. It was an incredible match. Almost 3 hours. She played 2 hours and 34 minutes in the second round. She played over 2 hours in her doubles match Thursday night. It would have been great to see her keep going. Serena Williams, she's the GOAT. But what we got in that short period of time was as good as the tournament could have hoped. I truly believe that was as good as they could have hoped to see from a 41-year-old who's hardly played any tennis. And I think it's gave juice to the entire event. Saturday, Petra Kvitova saves 2 match points against Muguruza, close to a 3-hour match. Another really great match. She outlasts her. Then we see last night, Kyrgios and Daniil Medvedev. Daniil Medvedev, the number 1 player in the world. Nick Kyrgios, the most interesting tennis player on planet Earth, and it's not close. When Nick Kyrgios is on his game, he is close to the best in the world. He made the Wimbledon final, losing it to Novak Djokovic. He won a doubles title in Australia earlier this year with his buddy Thanos Kakianis. He's back to another Grand Slam quarterfinal. It was a service clinic last night by Nick Kyrgios. It was the ground strokes, the incredible shot making. He was dialed in. John McEnroe said at the end of the broadcast, and I couldn't agree more, Nick Kyrgios playing this well is as close to the favorite of this tournament as there could be. Rafael Nadal is on the other side of the draw. I will never put a player that is not one of the big three as the favorite to win a tournament until somebody proves that they can beat them. Kyrgios couldn't beat Djokovic. Casper Ruud couldn't beat Rafael Nadal at the French Open. Until somebody does it, they will not be the favorite. But on the other half of the draw, where Kyrgios has Karen Khachanov of Russia in the quarterfinal, he's going to be a heavy favorite. FanDuel already sees close to a 2-1 favorite. He'll win that match. The other semifinal, you have Matteo Berrettini and Casper Ruud. Both are decorated players. Berrettini's been to a Wimbledon final like Kyrgios. He's been to a U.S. Open semi. Casper Ruud went to the French Open final just this year. So both guys are decorated. Both guys are good in Grand Slams. That's a tough semifinal. Kyrgios, to me, should still be the favorite if he's playing the way that he did last night. He looked focused. He focused less on the theatrics, focused less on just being a show out there, and he wanted to play tennis. He wanted to beat Daniil Medvedev, and to beat a guy of Medvedev's caliber, you're going to have to. That first set was incredible, incredible theater. 13-11 in the tiebreak. Just both men just serving their hearts out and hitting incredible ground strokes. But Kyrgios is just all over the court. He's always doing something that you've never seen before. And he finds a way to win. He's not for everybody. I get it. He can be a little much. He can be theatrical. But that's entertainment. That's what people go to see. They don't go to see the boring guy. Pete Sampras was not a fun player to watch. Nick Kyrgios is. I think the tennis world misses Andy Roddick a little bit because he was a whiner on the court, but he was interesting. Francis Tiafoe, who is an American man who is in the fourth round today against Rafael, he's entertaining. That match is this afternoon. I'm going to be watching it. Nadal has had a really easy third round, beat Gasquet in straight sets. Could have been the third set got a little hairy, but it wasn't that close. He's had a pretty smooth run here. Tiafoe got past Diego Schwartzman on Saturday. I think this will be an interesting match. I'm curious to see where the crowd goes. Tiafoe is a fan favorite because he's fun to watch. He likes to pump the crowd up. And he's American. He's on home soil. Well, Nadal is the GOAT, the best player ever. So I'm curious to see how that goes with Nadal will not get rattled by the crowd. He's not a guy that needs crowd support. Novak Djokovic gets pissed off when people are not rooting for him, which why would anybody root for him? But nevertheless, people in Serbia probably don't like him. But Nadal, that won't stop. That won't worry Nadal. So he's the first time of this tournament, however, that Nadal is not playing a night match. So maybe that will shake him up a little bit. Maybe that will change him a little bit. Curious to see if anything changes with his approach and in his game where he's going to be playing in the middle of the day. The tournament's been pretty warm so far. So a change for Nadal there. You got Cameron Norrie and Andrei Rublev who play the first match today. Rublev defeated Canadian Denis Shapovalov in the third round on Saturday. Over 4 hours. What a battle that was. Went to a tiebreak in the fifth set. Shapo gave it his all, but Rublev was just a little better. I'll see what he has left in the tank. Cameron Norrie's had one of the best seasons of anybody on the ATP Tour. So he looks to continue to get back-to-back quarterfinal appearances for him. And as of right now, I look at the men's draw. I think Nadal is the favorite on his side of the draw, and then you have Kyrgios on the other. For the women, it's pretty wide open. Swiatek, the number one player in the world, will be the favorite on her half of the draw, but she's never won a major on a court outside of clay, so take that with a grain of salt. Where yesterday we see Caroline Garcia, who has had the best summer of any woman on tour. She won in Cincinnati. She's won 3 events this summer. She's been to a final of another. She's 29-4 since since the week before Wimbledon. So she's been completely on a run. She beat Andreescu Friday night. She wins in straight sets yesterday, and she will play in her quarterfinal. She'll get Jabber. So, yeah, she gets Ons Jabber, who wins last night. Tomljanovic gets a win. So, I would say, or no, she gets Coco Gauff. Sorry, Coco Gauff will play Garcia. I look at that side of the draw. No woman has won a major. Jabber's been to a final, but she didn't win. Coco Gauff's been to a final, did not win. Caroline Garcia's been to one other major quarterfinal prior to this one. Coco Gauff has never lost to Garcia, but Garcia had lost 3 previous matches to Allison Risk yesterday, and she beat her quite easily. Coco's playing extremely well. I would say Garcia, if I was a betting man, I'd say Garcia's a slight favorite going into this match just because she is on such a run. She's played so fantastic. And Gauff has won in straight sets yesterday as well. But I just think Garcia's been a little more consistent in this tournament. Jabber will be the heavy favorite over Tomljanovic, although Tomljanovic is on a Cinderella run herself. She ended Serena's career. She was down. She saved 5 set points in the first set last night in her match against Samsonova, who was cruising through this tournament. She wins the first set, took an hour and 10 minutes. Second set, she wins 6-1, so she really settled in and found a way to win. So she's having a great run. It's just been fantastic. I mean, you got Azarenka today against Pliskova. You got Pegula against Petra Kvitova, 2 great women. Pegula is looking to break through with a Grand Slam, and while Kvitova is a 2-time major champion. At Wimbledon, we got Swiatek in action today. U.S. Open's been great. We'll talk about it all week as we go through the NFL and all the other news. But the U.S. Open has been stellar so far, and credit to the event for putting it on. College football. Interesting week 1, to say the least. The talking heads in the United States, which take what the talking heads say, including me, with a grain of salt. But listen to me, of course, because you can find this program wherever you get your podcasts or here live on YouTube. And you might as well listen to me because I do a lot of homework. But it wasn't a great betting weekend for me. I'm going to start by saying this. Oregon, Georgia, neutral site, not really. It was in Atlanta. Last night, no, it wasn't Atlanta. So that's not a neutral site at all. It was in Atlanta, but they called it a neutral site, which they wanted to put it in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome because it's one of the nicest stadiums on planet Earth, and it can fit more people. Let's be honest here. But Oregon was a 17.5-point dog against the reigning defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. And I thought, well, Bo Nix, transfer from Auburn, he's going to go over to Oregon. Georgia's old defensive coordinator is the new head coach at Auburn. They got some good transfers. Noah Sewell, one of my favorite linebackers in the country, is at Oregon. They can keep it close. They didn't. Georgia destroyed Oregon 49-3. And I'm going to say this. I thought, in my notes, I have underlined here, still loaded, Noah, about Georgia. This team is going to have no problems this year. To me, I don't know how they won't be back in the Final Four. I realize it's week 1. It's always overreaction. It's always a big, bold, hot take. I don't see many teams that can beat this team. Stetson Bennett looked better than he did last year, and he won a national championship playing quarterback. They have a 2-headed monster at tight end with Darnell Washington, who's 6'7", 260 pounds, and Brock Bowers, who is a freshman who caught the most touchdown passes by a tight end ever in college football last year. Elite tight end combo. Start with that. McIntosh, the running back, is coming back. He's going to get more looks, which he did, and he's already a good back because of Zahir White and Cook going to the NFL. Aiden Mitchell caught a big touchdown in the national championship game. He's returning. No problems. Loaded. Good defense. They'll give up 3 points. Not a big problem. They give up 3 more in Alabama. Alabama wins 55-0 against Utah State. I'm glad I didn't bet at Alabama plus 40. They covered that. 55-0 Utah State. Come on, Utah State. Come on. Georgia looked great. Looked better than great. They just dominant. Georgia was on Saturday afternoon. Oregon, better find it quick because that was ugly. Really ugly. Let's go to Michigan. Michigan. They win 51-7, but I'll tell you what, that was the most underwhelming 51-7 win I think I've seen. Cade McNamara, who might be the starting quarterback, but maybe might not be the starting quarterback because they're starting 2 quarterbacks in the first 2 weeks, which is the dumbest thing ever, went 9 for 18, 50% completion percentage, 136 yards, 1 touchdown. He threw 2 interceptions that were dropped. Cade McNamara played horrible in the game against Colorado State. Running game was good. Defense scored twice. They got a block punt. So defense, special teams was way better than the offense. J.J. McCarthy will start against Hawaii. You know, we see Hawaii the first 2 weeks. They get crushed 61-13 to Vandy, which Vandy is the doormat of the SEC, and then they lose by 25 to Western Michigan. That should be a close game. Cade McNamara, it's one game. I saw him play last year. He's a mobile guy when he wants to be. He's a check down type quarterback. He's not a gunslinger. He needs help of his teammates. He needs a good running game. He needs a good defense. But J.J. McCarthy definitely has the inside track right now because that was a horrible performance from Cade McNamara yesterday. Harbaugh is saying he's going to use the Bible to help him choose his starting quarterback with Solomon or something that he, again, to ask me about the Bible, that's not the way to go. Although, fun fact for all you listeners out there, I used to go to Camp Wildwood as a kid, just an aside. And I went 4 or 5 times, loved it. If I was a parent, which I never want to be, but if you are a parent out there and summer's winding down, next summer you're tired of your kid, you want some time away, you want to have some alone time with the wife, here's something to do. Send your kid to Camp Wildwood because it helps the kid. They learn friendships, they get outdoors, they get some exercise, something to do. Looking past that, still a side note, I was at camp one year, and you can't bring your phone, you can't bring any books, so on your downtime, your options are limited. So you can bring a Bible, however, which, why you can't bring another book is beyond me. But I read the Bible, I read the whole thing, front to cover, when I was there, and then I left there, and now I've become an atheist. So maybe don't send your kid there if you're religious, because that's what happened to me. No real pushback from my parents, though. So maybe that's a good, I don't know. But that's just a side note for today, is that go to camp, read the Bible, you become an atheist. If you're a big-time religious family, maybe don't send your kid. If you want your kid to have fun, normal life, send your kid. Good time. Michigan, underwhelming. Notre Dame, Ohio State. Matt Wright was excited, texting me at halftime. Notre Dame, they're going to cover. I mean, if you're betting, this is good. They covered. They did. Kudos to Matt Wright. If he's listening to this after the fact. Congratulations. Your team lost a game and you covered a number. First off, Ohio State looked horrible on offense. Horrible. They did not own the line of scrimmage running the football until the fourth quarter. They couldn't get anything going. Jackson Smith and Java was hurt in the first quarter. And they didn't have a number 2 option. Marvin Harrison Jr. the third didn't work with him and C.J. Stroud. It was tough. It was discombobulated from the beginning, and Notre Dame used that to their advantage. I thought their pass rush was good. The Notre Dame defense was solid the entire game. The entire game, they played extremely well, the Notre Dame defense. Ohio State, I give them credit for finding perseverance in the fourth quarter and scoring that big touchdown. The biggest thing for Ohio State for me is their defense. Last season, they gave up over 250 rushing yards to Michigan in their loss in late November. They had one of the worst rushing defenses in the nation. Well, they went out and got a new defensive coordinator who has helped every school he's went to. He's helped their defense, and in particular, stopping the run. Notre Dame offensively was anemic. Buckner, the quarterback, brutal. Didn't get anything done. His passing game was terrible. Holds the ball too long. The running game, Notre Dame looked like they were missing Kyrgios Williams. I'll tell you that because they couldn't get anything going. That offensive line, the offense wasn't good for Notre Dame. So what I would say to Matt Wright and all the other Irish fans out there is you got a good defense, pretty solid. But they usually do. Notre Dame always has a good defense. Your offense stinks. You don't have a quarterback. I've seen them play they don't have a quarterback. And the guy behind him isn't any good either. I like Tyree, the running back. He can do some things. You should use him more in space. Michael Mayer, he'll go top 10 in the NFL draft. Great talent. Can run routes like crazy. Can take a hit and still make a play. But that offense, to think that, we almost beat Ohio State. You have to beat other teams aren't trash. They got a decently tough schedule. Sure, they got Marshall this week. You schedule a tough game, then you schedule a cookie cutter little easy game. That's what everybody does. No problem with that. But I don't love Notre Dame's prospects offensively moving forward because their offense just stunk. But Ohio State defense showed up. They played big. Other college football notes. I thought Oklahoma had a really solid game. What I like about Oklahoma is that when Lincoln Riley was there, their defense always was no good. I mean, the Big 12 defenses are not normally great. But they got a defensive coach now in Brent Venables. Dylan Gabriel can play offense with Marvin Mims, Josiah Gray. They got Willis, the tight end, who had 2 touchdown grabs. He's got great instincts in the red zone. I think Oklahoma's going to have a really good season because they have a defensive-minded coach with still great offensive pieces around them. Sometimes when you get a defensive coach, you lose great offensive players, and I think they have a combination of both. So that bodes well. Texas won big. Quinn Ewers looked interesting. Baylor won big. The Big 12 had a good day, while the Pac-12 did not. Yes, USC crushed. Utah loses to Florida. On the road, they missed a game-winning field goal at the end of a game-tying field goal at the end of the game. Huge win for the Gators program. I look at Napier and he wins his first game as a head coach. Mike Norvell got a huge win last night for Florida State and kind of revamping that program. So Florida had a good weekend because the U won as well in Mario Cristobal's debut. Tough loss for Utah. They're done. They're done. College football playoff. I truly think that. I heard Greg McElroy say that on the telecast last night, Florida LSU. This might kill Utah's chances already. I had them outside the Final Four. I'm glad I didn't put them in because it's a close game, but it's still a loss. And I think their schedule isn't overly tough, but USC is still lurking, and we'll see what Oregon can do to bounce back after that horrible loss. But tough loss for Utah. And Anthony Richardson put on a show. This kid can play. There's a reason Emory Jones transferred to Arizona State, and that's because Anthony Richardson's the future at Florida, and he could be the future in the NFL as well because I think he's a guy that could be playing on Sundays. Derek May, North Carolina. Here's a quarterback to watch. He's strong but has athletic prowess. That was a great North Carolina game against App State. Back and forth, overtimes, down to the wire. I mean, it was a wild weekend North Carolina game. You had Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech. You had Rutgers beat Boston College. You had Houston go into triple overtime. They sneak away with a victory. Arkansas edges Cincinnati. USC dominated. Caleb Williams had a big day. Bryce Young had a big day. So Heisman favorites definitely showed out early, while CJ Stroud, I think, took a step back in that department. Interesting week one in college football is not done yet. We have Clemson, Georgia Tech tonight. So that wraps up week one in college football. But I mean, it was a great week. I mean, last night's game, I couldn't go to bed because I got LSU and Florida State playing, and some stupid reason Florida State does a halfback pitch on the 1 yard line. They fumble. LSU gets the ball. They go on a 99-yard drive in a little over a minute, and yet their extra point to tie the game, send the game to overtime, is blocked. And Florida State wins but 24-23 by 1 point. Absolute craziness, absolute malarkey, and that's why you love college football. That's why you love college sports. Mistakes happen, and it leads to chaos like that, and we certainly saw some of that this weekend. UFC Paris, Saturday afternoon. Mix that in while watching U.S. Open, college football, a little baseball. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff this weekend. Cyril Gane was a heavy favorite against Tai Tuivasa, and for good reason. But I will say, I went into this fight thinking Cyril Gane would win it by UD, or unanimous decision. Cyril Gane is one of the most technical fighters in all of the UFC. A heavyweight that doesn't look like a heavyweight. He's ripped in incredible shape. And Tai Tuivasa, a.k.a. Bam Bam, he's a striker. He's a guy that's going to knock you out. He's got one way to go. He's not going to get to the ground. He's not doing any of that. He's a guy that's knocked Derek Lewis out. He's knocked out Greg Hardy. He's knocked out some of the best fighters in the heavyweight division. And what I liked about the fight was that Cyril Gane went toe-to-toe with Tai. He didn't back off a lot. He engaged. They both got their shots in. Second round, Tai hit Gane hard. He hurt him. Dropped him to his knee, but Cyril Gane was able to recover, able to get back into the fight. Then early in the third round, Gane connects with hits Tuivasa with a head kick. If that was Kamaru Usman, he'd be knocked out again. But Tai somehow he buckled, but he stayed on his feet. Then about a minute later, it was about a six strike attack from Gane where he hits him straight in the mouth, hits him again, shot in the back of the head. Tai somehow stayed on his feet for about four of them, and eventually that ended the fight. But incredible atmosphere in Paris, and you hear Gane after the fight. We saw the UFC is going to be going back to Paris because that crowd was into it. It was loud. And, I think the UFC loves going to England because of the fighting history there. Boxing is huge in London, where Anthony Joshua usually fights. You see Tyson Fury. He's always fighting at Wembley Stadium. The UFC needs to look at Paris because that's definitely a location that's winning right now. That's something I think they put themselves on the map to get another event because of the atmosphere, because it was sold out, and just the overall event. Looking ahead, Cyril Gane fought Ngannou in January, and he lost via unanimous decision. Gane used his body weight. He won on the ground in that fight. I'd love to see the two fight again because I think Gane would approach the fight differently. I'm not sure he can beat Francis Ngannou. Ngannou is a really great champion. He's fought some great guys in his career. He's beaten Stipe Miocic. He's beaten Cyril Gane. I think he wants to fight John Jones. We'll wait and see. But the heavyweight division is still very murky because Gane beats Tuivasa, and that was really the last man for him to beat. He's beaten Derek Lewis. I mean, he's beaten everybody else. And now there's still the rumors that Stipe Miocic will fight John Jones in December at the last UFC pay-per-view of 2022. It's not been officially announced, so it's still up in the air. My thought is if that fight cannot come together, if there's a complication, Gane should fight Ngannou for the title again because I think he's earned it. He's lost one fight in his career, and it was to Ngannou. It'll be an entertaining fight. I want to see John Jones and Stipe Miocic fight. I need to see that fight. They're two of the best fighters in the history of the UFC. it's only fitting that the best light heavyweight of all time and the best heavyweight of all time go toe-to-toe. I don't know what's going to happen. Stipe Miocic hasn't fought in a long time, and the worry about Stipe, if he fights Jon Jones in December, he will not be fighting. If he beats Jon Jones, he will not be fighting Francis Ngannou for the title until July, June. He likes to take a long time after his fights to be back, to be ready, to be prepared. So what my pitch would be, if I see Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic is announced, I would put Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou for January. And then the winner of so if Jon Jones beats Miocic, if Ngannou beats or Gane beats, then you have that fight in the summer, July during UFC Fight Week, during the Hall of Fame week, which is the first week of July. I would have that for the heavyweight championship of the world. That's how I would approach this division because it is murky. You don't want to keep blocking it up too much. I don't love interim title fights. I don't think, Ngannou tore his ACL. He can't do anything about that. If he's going to be ready to fight in early 2023, you don't need an interim title fight between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic because, quite frankly, both of them don't deserve it. In particular, Jon Jones, who's never fought at heavyweight. Dana will probably do it, but it's not the smart decision, in my opinion. Co-main event, Robert Whittaker defeated Marvin Vettori in just easy fashion. Whittaker is 14-2 in his last 16 fights. His only 2 losses were against the last stylebender, Israel Adesanya, who has dominated Robert Whittaker, knocked him out in his first fight. I thought the second fight was much closer than the scorecards gave it. I thought Robert Whittaker could have won that fight. Again, he's not the champion. He didn't knock him out. He didn't win by submission. So I'm okay with the champion keeping the belt. But it's clear, Robert Whittaker can beat anybody in the division other than the last stylebender. He's beaten Vettori. He's beaten Kelvin Gastelum. Give him anybody in that division, he will beat them. The last stylebender is fighting Alex Pereira in November in New York for the title. I don't think Dana wants to put Whittaker Adesanya 3 so soon. I definitely don't think he wants to do that because it's been done. It's something that we've seen twice, and perhaps it gets more interesting if Pereira can beat the last stylebender, which I wouldn't rule out. He's beat him twice in kickboxing. We'll see what he can do in the octagon. What I would say is Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa both won co-main event fights in the last month. Whittaker just beat Vettori. Paulo Costa beat Luke Rockhold. That would be a great fight. Both guys are good strikers. Both guys can get on the ground when you need them to. You have those two fight each other. Last stylebender can get some time off after fighting Pereira because he's such an active fighter. And the winner of Whittaker and Costa could fight the last stylebender or Pereira for the title in early 2023 or mid to early 2023. That's how I see this going. No other huge fights on the card. Joaquin Buckley lost his fight to number 12 Imamov. That was an interesting fight. Charles Jourdain, the Canadian, lost his second straight fight to Nathaniel Wood via unanimous decision. Nasrat Haqparast, who I think is going to be a star in the UFC, wins a big fight against John Makadishi, who is a Canadian. So 2 Canadians both lose on the card. So now we're heading into UFC pay-per-view this weekend. Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev in Vegas. It's Nate Diaz's last fight on his UFC contract. So this could be it for Nate Diaz at age 37. But there's also the case if he can beat Chimaev, which I don't see happening, he might be next in line to fight Leon Edwards. That was his last fight. It was an interesting one where Diaz nearly knocked out Edwards in the 5th round. With Chimaev winning, there's Usman still lurking, so he might have to wait. He might get to face Colby Covington, which would be fun. Maybe they'll book Chimaev and Jorge Masvidal, which would be, I think, Dana White's dream because Masvidal is such a promoter. He's such a big name in the sport. Doesn't matter that he loses every fight he does. He's still a brand name. He's still somebody that sells. So there's that option. We'll also see Tony Ferguson move up to welterweight. He's going to fight Li Yingling. He lost to Michael Chandler in his last fight, that brutal head kick KO, but he looked fantastic in the fight prior to the knockout. So I'm curious to see how he looks this weekend in the co-main event. Kevin Holland is also on the card, the third fight of the pay-per-view. I love watching Kevin Holland fight. It's a catchweight bout against Rodriguez, and I love seeing him go in the octagon. So that's another really interesting fight for me. That's a lower one on the card for you guys, is watching him because he's entertaining, and he's another guy I think the UFC really likes is Kevin Holland, and he'll fight anybody anywhere. Major League Baseball weekend, some big stories. Number one, Jays sweep the Pittsburgh Pirates. I thought they had a good weekend. The pitching was solid. Bo Bichette came up with some big hits. They played close games but found a way to win. That's the biggest thing. Bullpen was good. It was you did what you had to do. You're playing the Pirates. You're playing a bad team. You take advantage of it. You look around, some teams didn't do that. Milwaukee Brewers lost all 3 games to the Arizona Diamondbacks this weekend. The Arizona Diamondbacks swept the Milwaukee Brewers. The San Francisco Giants took 2 of 3 from the Philadelphia Phillies. Same position these two teams that the Jays are in stunk it up. Padres lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers. So teams that are in desperate situations didn't play as well. Not to mention the Orioles win 2 of 3 against Oakland, but Oakland wins the game yesterday. So Blue Jays now have a 2.5 game lead over the Baltimore Orioles for the third and final wild card spot in the American League. They start a series with the Orioles today. It's a doubleheader. 2 o'clock first pitch. They got Kevin Gausman on the mound first, and then Jose Barrios will pitch tonight or later this afternoon in the night session. But you start a 4-game series over 3 days. You have 10 games remaining against the Baltimore Orioles. This is where you can close the door. You win all 4, 6.5, the Orioles are done. Their season might as well be over if they lose these games. However, they could win both games today. They're half a game back. That's how this can shift for both these teams. Orioles are not going to quit. They played extremely well against the Blue Jays this year, but you got Gausman and you got Barrios on the mound today. This is where you make your money. This is where you show that you're worth it. This is where you show, hey, this is why we were the favorites to win the World Series. Because guess what? The Seattle Mariners, who have made the playoffs since 2001, swept the Guardians this weekend, winning in extras yesterday after a 4-hour rain delay. Cal Riley, pinch hit, 2-run dinger. They're finding ways to win games. Luis Castillo is pitching fantastic for the Mariners. They're just winning games. They're playing a team that's just as desperate that was leading the American League Central. They sweep them on the road. They've won their last 7 games, the Mariners. They're doing their part. Jays catch a break yesterday where the Tampa Bay Rays got absolutely hosed against the New York Yankees. Yandy Diaz, 3-2, guys on first and second and third, called strike. The ball was at his toes, called strike by the umpire. I thought it was Angel Hernandez back there. Brutal call. Umpires are feeling bad for the New York Yankees because they're so fucking pathetic right now. Only player doing anything is Aaron Judge, got to 53 home runs over the weekend. 9 away from the Yankee record. 9 away, I think he can get there. But the Yankees only have a 5-game lead on the Orioles. They only have a 5.5-game lead on the Toronto Blue Jays. So they need to start winning games. They need to start winning some games in New York because people are going to panic. They are panicking in New York. Panicked before because they didn't get Donovan Mitchell in the trade to the Knicks. Now the Yankees are losing games. Oy vey. The Jets and Giants are going to stink. So that's not going to be good. Houston just wins. Takes 2 or 3 from the Angels. Only loss they get was when Shohei Ohtani just pitched a gem. Goes 8 innings. 1-run ball. 111 pitches. My God. Aaron Judge is going to win American League MVP. I think. Not sure he should, though. Shohei Ohtani. is a superhero. He's a freak. There's nobody like him. Aaron Judge hits dingers. Guess what? A lot of people can hit dingers. Albert Pujols can hit dingers. He's got 16 home runs. He's 42 years old. That's the fourth most all time by a player age 42 or older. Yesterday, pinch hit, bottom of the eighth inning, 2-run shot. Home run number 695. He is now one away from tying Alex Rodriguez for fourth most all time, which is a fraudulent number because Alex Rodriguez is a drug cheat, steroid loser. So Albert Pujols is already ahead of him, if you ask me. 5 homers away from 700 to be the fourth player ever to accomplish the feat. Not to mention, I saw Alex Rodriguez over the weekend on Twitter post a video asking people if he should come back. Probably because he wants to get to 700 home runs. He's seeing Pujols do it. He wants to get some notoriety just because the A-Rod cast, or whatever they're calling that, in ESPN2 or ESPN Plus, has been such a shit show because he's not interesting. I mean, he's more interesting than Jeter, but that's not saying much. Jeter is... This Fiji water bottle is more interesting than Derek Jeter. But that's not going well, so we need something. And I've also heard he's having trouble coming up with the funds to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves. I read that in the Wall Street Journal last week. So, good for A-Rod. Come back, play some baseball. But Albert Pujols, not taking steroids, doing it the right way, pinch hitting, 16 dingers on the season, 695 career home runs, 5 homers away from 700. Will he get there? I don't know. They play in a bad division. He's going to have a lot of division games down the stretch against these bad teams. Oddly enough, they're only 6 games back of the Mets for the second spot in the National League. Dodgers are going to win the National League, have the top spot, just like the Houston Astros will have the top spot in the American League. Now, who will have the second seed in the National League is interesting because all 2 teams all season have had leads in their division. The New York Mets had a 15.5 game lead over the Tampa Bay Rays and the Toronto Blue Jays on July 8th. It's now a 5-game lead on September 5th. While the Mets have had as many as 11 game leads, 3, it's fluctuated. After the weekend where the Mets lost 2 of 3 to the sorry Nationals, and the Braves swept the Marlins for the second time in as many weeks, the Atlanta Braves are now 1 game back of the New York Metropolitans. The New York Mets. Max Scherzer left Saturday's game with left side fatigue. Oy vey. The only thing that can derail the Mets is health. Both pitchers have had bad health lately. Last year, Max Scherzer, dead arm, in the playoffs, couldn't pitch. If that happens again, Carlos Carrasco, 2 2/3 yesterday, 5 earned. Taijuan Walker, 4.30 ERA since the All-Star break. David Peterson hasn't been pitching in the rotation anymore. What do you got? I'll tell you what you got. You got a sorry offense. You got Starling Marte, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. That's about it. The New York Metropolitans can win the World Series if their pitching is healthy. DeGrom is the best pitcher in baseball when healthy. But that is the operative word, isn't it? When healthy. It would be great if everybody was healthy, but that's not the way the sports world works. Some people are healthy, some are not. Some players are good, some players aren't. Well, I said the Dodgers wouldn't win the pennant. I'm sticking to that. Dodgers will not get to the World Series. I'm sticking to that prediction. But in saying that, I thought the Metropolitans might be the team to do it. But just a sleeping giant like they were last year. The Atlanta Braves were a wild card team all year. Slow start. People complain in Atlanta still about Brian Snitker as their manager. He's not a great manager, doesn't know what he's doing. Now 1 game back of the Mets. Kyle Wright is pitching fantastic. Max Fried's pitching like an ace. Matt Olson's playing great. Acuña's healthy. We're going to get Ozzy Albies back for the playoffs. My God. Maurice Harris II playing great in center field, getting big hits for us. What's not to like? Not much. It's hard to argue with the Atlanta Braves and their success. Mets. Steve Cohen's put a lot of money into that team being relevant, into that team being good. I advise the New York Metropolitans to win that division. I don't know how the playoffs are going to shake up. I don't think the Cardinals will catch you, but you never know. Oh no, I wouldn't want to go to Atlanta in a playoff series. I wouldn't want to start in Atlanta when you've had home field all year and that's what you're playing for. Not to mention, there's people in this world that freak out. There's people in this world that get upset. Like Leaf fans. They don't get upset in the rink because it's a library. They get upset on Twitter. They threaten people's lives. They do it a cowardly way. That's the Leaf fans' way about expressing frustration. I realize I'm lumping everybody together, but you'll see my point here in a minute. Cowboys fans, they throw garbage. They yell at their players. They tell Jerry Jones to go to hell. Everything's bigger in Texas except, well, what is everything's bigger in Texas? Except, well, maybe the Cowboys, because the Cowboys don't win anything. So you could say the Cowboys as a whole. Except everything's not bigger in Texas because Texas doesn't win anything. Texas Rangers stink. Dallas is irrelevant. Dallas Stars are a relevant franchise, and the Dallas Cowboys are even more irrelevant because they don't win jack shit. So everything's smaller in Texas. That's how they express frustration. The Mets, New York people. Mets, Yankees, different. You say, well, they're different fan base. Are they? Are they really? I mean, Mets fans might be a little bit more of a gritty fan base, like in the Darryl Strawberry, like in those cocaine-filled teams in the 80s, 1986 World Series champions, the New York Mets. The Yankees are prestige. The Yankees are the pinstripes, but yet both fan bases seem to express frustration. Both fan bases are irrational. And both fan bases will not accept failure. This would be great theater if both New York teams could somehow lose their division down the stretch here. If the Mets could lose their division to the team that won the World Series last year, and then the Yankees could somehow get surpassed by the Blue Jays, which I doubt, or the Tampa Bay Rays, the Rays who pay their team nothing. That's why it would make it more interesting. The Rays who pay 10 cents on the dollar for everything, they somehow win their division. Oh, what a poetic justice that would be for the New York Yankees to pay all that money for Stanton to go 0-for-5 yesterday. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But I tell you what, the New York Mets have a better chance of winning a pennant than the New York Yankees because the Yankees are not beating the Astros. They're not. Who's going to win the American League Central? Who the hell knows? Cleveland gets swept at home by the Mariners. Minnesota takes 1 of 3 from the White Sox. White Sox are now only 2 games back. Tony La Russa's got problems. He's 77 years old. Of course he does. He's old. He's gone from the team. The team gets hot. Team's pitching better. 2 games back of the division lead. Twins go to New York today. They're in New York. Guardians this week, I think they play an easier series. White Sox have the Mariners in the south side of Chicago. This division is still very much up for grabs. I think it'll come down to the wire. The only thing the White Sox can do to salvage their season is win their division title because they're not going to catch the Blue Jays in the wild card race. Tony La Russa is going to be fired. Well, he's not going to be fired because his contract is over after this year. So his buddy Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox, owner of the Chicago Bulls, can just play it off as if, he's sick. We can't have him anymore. So he doesn't have to fire his friend, the Hall of Famer, which was a bad idea from the beginning to bring him in. Abreu's getting hits. Jimenez is healthy. A.J. Pollock is playing good in center field. I still think the White Sox are the best team in this division, top to bottom. Cleveland's got a bunch of injuries. Zach Plesac's on the injured list. Aaron Savali's on the injured list. pitching-wise, other than Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito, who have been terrible all season for the White Sox. They're in the best spot because they have the best team. Dylan Cease is pitching like a Cy Young Award winner. I think he'll get more looks if they can win their division and make the postseason, because you have McClanahan sitting there, you have Verlander sitting there. But if either of them don't pitch that much in September, Dylan Cease Saturday night went 8 2/3 of no-hit ball. Luis Arias broke it up. Would have been his last get a no-hitter, but Luis Arias breaks it up. Good for him. You do not let a guy get a no-hitter on your team, not to mention a division rival. Hell of a start for Dylan Cease. Would have been nice to see it. It was coming across the ticker on ABC when I was watching college basketball, college football, and other different sports on the mothership. But guess what? That's sports. You play into the last whistle. Arias breaks it up. Would have been a great story. Twins are not there to do the White Sox any favors. Baseball is interesting. I mean, today's Labor Day, so you got a bunch of sports. We got a double dose of CFL football. Great game last night between the Riders and the Bombers. Came out of the wire. Interception by Winnipeg late led to Winnipeg getting another victory. Frustrating loss for the Riders because I think they should have won the game. We got Tiger Cats Argos today for the 4th time in 5 weeks, which is just astounding that that's the way the schedule was put together. And we got Elks Stampeders in the second dose of the doubleheader in Calgary. Bo Levi Mitchell still on the bench. Jake Meyer will get his second start of the season. Not to mention, Dane Evans is the third-string quarterback today. Former Wake Forest and Georgia quarterback Jamie Newman will make his first career CFL start. I'm looking forward to watching him play. I've seen Dane Evans play enough. Hamilton's seen him play enough. He's not going to win any games. Not to mention the Ottawa Red Blacks have won 2 in a row. They are now tied with the Hamilton Tiger Cats with 3-8 records. So both terrible records, but they've won 2 in a row. They're starting to find some momentum, and it could be interesting down the stretch here. Toronto has an opportunity to really grab a stranglehold of this division. McLeod Bethel-Thompson played lights out in the second half last week against Hamilton. He needs to do it again this afternoon so that Toronto can grab a hold of this division and be the clear-cut favorites. So that's afternoon. We have multiple afternoon baseball games. We got Twins in New York, Blue Jays, Orioles, as I mentioned. We also got U.S. Open tennis. It's a good day. Monday, Labor Day. I love having sports to watch. That's what I'll be doing this afternoon. That's great. Love to see it, and looking forward to doing that this afternoon. So that's this weekend's news and notes. That's what I came up with this weekend. Now we get to our final divisional preview. We've done 7 so for last, and that's the AFC West. The new look AFC West, a division that is completely wide open. You have people that are all on the Chargers. You have people that love the Chiefs to bounce back. You have people that love the Raiders with Derek Carr. And it's so interesting. And let's start with the team in Las Vegas with the Las Vegas Raiders. Last season, people forget that the Raiders made the playoffs, that the Raiders were a few plays away from beating the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round. They had to fire John Gruden midway through the season. There was all that controversy with him. They had the controversy with Henry Ruggs Jr. III, who was in a car accident and killed a woman. He's off the team now. He's in jail. They had Damon Arnett, who's another first-round pick who had a firearm on a video saying he was going to hurt people. He was arrested. The team went through the ringer last year. It was an ugly scene, and yet somehow they made the playoffs, and they beat the Chargers to do it. The Chargers that everybody loved last year, Justin Herbert, the Chargers are so good. The Raiders beat them in a game. That seems to be lost on some people. So the Raiders come into this season with a new head coach. It's Josh McDaniels, the former offensive coordinator, one-time head coach of the Denver Broncos way back when. So McDaniels departs Bill Belichick, who's been working with for a very long time, and now comes to Las Vegas. Gus Bradley was fired as defensive coordinator, one of the big reasons why Vegas has had trouble the last number of years. So he's gone. They bring in Patrick Graham, who was with the Philadelphia Eagles for a long time as a defensive coordinator. So Patrick Graham is the new defensive coordinator. So some shakeups there. Not to mention Zay Jones departs for Jacksonville. Kenyon Drake was cut. He is now in Baltimore. Richie Incognito, potentially a future Hall of Fame right guard, retires. And they also cut Alex Leatherwood, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago of Mike Mayock, who was let go in the offseason, the GM. And Leatherwood is now gone, and Cleveland Farrell, another first-round pick, looks like he's going to be playing special teams. So Ruggs is a first-round pick. He's in jail. Arnett, first-round pick. I think he's out of jail, but he was cut from the team. He's not in the NFL anymore. Leatherwood is on the Bears practice squad, and you have Cleveland Farrell, who is a pass rusher out of Clemson, who is now a special teams player. That's where first-round picks have gone for the Las Vegas Raiders. Nowhere. So, first X factor for this team, we'll get to the big play offense, but no offensive line offseason moves. It's by far the biggest weakness of this team, and this team does have some weaknesses, although I like the team. The offensive line is an issue. I mean, Richie Incognito retiring does not help this team. Richie Incognito has his problems. If you don't remember Richie Incognito, he bullied Martin, I forget his first name now, Terrence Martin in Miami. He was cut from that team, went on to play for the Bills. He's a big, brutish, bullying type guy, but nobody could argue he was not great at his position. He was mean. He was hard to play against. So he's gone. They still have Colton Miller, who's good. Their left side, I like a lot with Colton Miller and John Simpson. That's fine. But they got Lester Cotton Sr., who has played very little in the NFL at right guard. Thayer Mumford Jr. is a rookie at right tackle. I don't love this offensive line. Something this offense couldn't do last year is run the football. I don't expect them to be able to run the football effectively again this year. Josh Jacobs is entering his fourth season in the NFL. The team declined his fifth-year option, so he's playing for a job. They also drafted Zamir White out of Georgia, so he is another back added. They have Amir Abdullah for depth, but I don't view an offensive line as particularly great in pass protection. I mean, Derek Carr's had to run for his life basically his whole career. And he's learned how to do it. I mean, his brother had to do it in Houston. He hasn't lasted as long as Derek has. And to me, Derek is a really good quarterback in the NFL. But offensive line weakness, particular on the right side, and I don't see them having the ability to run the ball effectively. So it's going to be a one-dimensional offense with Derek Carr being asked to be Superman, play in, play out. That's a big problem. Number 2 X factor. This offense is going to be elite. I look around. One of the biggest additions of the offseason was Davante Adams going from Green Bay to Vegas. Green Bay couldn't afford the paycheck that Davante wanted, not to mention Davante wanted out of Green Bay so that he could link up with his college teammate, Derek Carr. They wanted to play together forever. He enjoyed his time with Aaron Rodgers, but he wanted a new location. He wanted to come to Vegas. So Davante Adams is now here. They have Hunter Renfrow already, who is incredibly clever, one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's a small dude out of Clemson, but he can just flat out play. He's shifty. He can make guys miss. He's just a Swiss Army knife. They brought over Mac Hollins formerly of the Miami Dolphins. I like him. He's a wide receiver, tight end type guy. He can help you in the run game. He can also make big catches, 50-50 balls. So Mac Hollins is around. And they also have, of course, Darren Waller, who is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He's been holding in during camp, not practicing as much because he wants a new contract. So it is a bit contentious there. But when he's on the field, he is elite. And He's always dialed in, and he's got a great rapport with Derek Carr. I don't know how they're going to run the football, but this passing game is going to be incredibly hard to stop for defenses because Derek Carr is a good quarterback. He's accurate. You got maybe the best receiver in football with Devontae Adams. You have Darren Waller, who's one of the best tight ends. You got one of the best route runners in Hunter Renfrow. Not to mention Zamir White, Josh Jacobs. They both can catch the ball in the backfield. They also brought over Brandon Bolden, who was the third down back for the Patriots for many seasons. He's a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield. He's used to coming in for that role. So I expect him to be part of this offense as well. The tough thing for this team is who they're going to address at running back because they have Amir Abdullah, who's bounced around. He's played for Detroit. He's played for Minnesota. He's played for a lot of teams in this league. And they got Brandon Bolden. They might put either of these guys on special teams so they can dress 4 running backs in the game, but they'll have to work through that issue as they move forward. Defensively, I think their pass rush is going to be solid for the Raiders. They have Max Crosby, Pro Bowler, All-Pro, got a contract extension in the offseason, well-deserved. They brought over Chandler Jones from the Arizona Cardinals, who had 5 sacks in the opening week of last year. He died down after that, but he can still play ball. Chandler Jones is still a very good pass rusher. Him and Max Crosby on both edges will cause problems for offensive lines. And I think it only helps Mad Max because he did not have his, Khalil Mack is a good player, but he's had some success, but he was not the type of player that Mad Max was last year or the type of pressure that he can bring on the other side that can help him get looks. They also brought over Bilal Nichols. He's played some good football in his career. So they're up front. I like their group. They don't have a whole lot of depth behind these guys if there is an injury, but I like the pass rush. Now, secondary is where it gets thin. Jonathan Abram is a strong safety that is in the box and a safety that can play. He's physical. He can do that type of game. But he reminds me a lot of Jamal Adams in Seattle, who can play the run. You keep him in front of you, you can tackle, you can make a big hit. You put him in coverage, he is a flat-out liability, and I think teams will be wanting to do this a lot this year. Put a tight end on a safety. It's Abram going up against some of the Travis Kelce in this division. That's not a matchup that the Raiders will want. He's not really great against anybody. Putting him in space against a running back is not something that is particularly great. So he's not great there. Denzel Perriman's a linebacker. Your linebacker group doesn't have to be great. You look at the Rams last season, they win a Super Bowl. It was likely the weakest part of their team, but they brought over Rock Ya-Sin from the Indianapolis Colts. He's okay. Nate Hobbs has always been put in that place. He hasn't exactly jumped off the page for the Raiders. So I think their defense, in particular the back end of it, is still a problem. We'll see if Patrick Graham can do things schematically to make this defense better, because I think a big key of it is just getting pressure on the quarterback early so that your defense doesn't have to hold up, doesn't have to keep guys locked up for 5 to 8 seconds. And if Max Crosby, Chandler Jones can get pressure, forces a Justin Herbert to break out of the pocket, check down, or throw the ball away to avoid a sack, that's a win, and it keeps your defense, keeps your secondary free from big plays, because we saw that a lot last year. Mike Williams on the Chargers at a deep play. We know the guys on the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill obviously not there anymore, but he was doing it against the Raiders. So McDaniels is the new head coach, will be the offensive coordinator. But to me, it's the defensive coordinator and Patrick Graham that holds the most interest, that has the most responsibility in this division to have an impact, because the defense needs to be solid in order for this team to have a chance. The division is too loaded for the type of defense that they had last year, for the type of season they had defensively last year, and for this team to compete for a division title, in my mind. Now let's go to Denver. Sports books are lighting up right now because the Denver Broncos are just being bet on steady. They are the favorite somehow on many books to win the AFC West. The Denver Broncos, to me, are a desperate team. The Denver Broncos have been anemic. They've been irrelevant for a long period of time. Since Peyton Manning left, they haven't had a quarterback. Since Peyton Manning left, they really haven't been close. Drew Lock comes in. They bring in Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch, Chad Kelly. The list goes on. Teams have been in the bottom of the division while Kansas City's gotten better. Los Angeles drafted Justin Herbert, and the Raiders have stayed relevant to a sense with the John Gruden drama and Derek Carr's stability at quarterback. So the Broncos looked around and said, in order to at least be competent, we need a quarterback, and they decided to plunge. They traded for Seattle Seahawks starting quarterback Russell Wilson. In that package, they gave up Drew Lock, which is like giving somebody away. They trade Noah Fant, a tight end I like a lot, who has a lot of upside, and Shelby Harris, who is one of the leaders of that defense. Not to mention they gave up multiple first-round picks in the trade, and then last week they locked up Russell Wilson to a massive extension. I mentioned last week, I don't love the signing. Russell Wilson, to me, has declined the last number of years. He's not the same runner that he used to be. He had better weapons in Seattle than he's going to this year in Denver. Not to mention he had an easier division in Seattle than he's going to this year in Denver. But he's coming in this season with a hell of a lot to prove. He's 33 years old, and he said he wanted to leave Seattle because he wanted to have a better chance to win a Super Bowl. So he needs to prove that he can do it against some of the best competition in all of the NFL. In that, Vic Fangio is gone as head coach. Nathaniel Hackett is the new head coach coming over from the Green Bay Packers. And you look at this, I look at this team. They bring in Billy Turner, offensive line, who's got experience. They sign Randy Gregory as a pass rusher. X factor number one, Nathaniel Hackett's offense. In Seattle, they use run pass option plays very little. They also use play action only 20% of the plays in his career in Seattle. Well, Nathaniel Hackett, listening to podcasts, doing my own research, even if you watch, think of Aaron Rodgers. One of the biggest components of Aaron Rodgers' game is the play action game. You have Aaron Jones, you have A.J. Dillon. Use the two backs to open up the defense. Aaron Rodgers will take shots down the field. Well, I want to see what Nathaniel Hackett does with Russell Wilson. Is that the same strategy here? Russ has used very little of it. I think it will help his game because you look at the offense. Jerry Jeudy was one of the best receivers in all of college football a number of years ago. He's had injuries, he's had inconsistencies, and we're still waiting to see if Jerry Jeudy has what it takes. I think he's got all the potential in the world. I like him a lot. I love watching him in college. He was a great route runner. It's year 3 for him. This is make or break. You finally got a quarterback. We'll see if the two can get a connection. But Judy's got tons of potential. Cortland Sutton is a stud. He's more than just a 50-50 receiver. He can burn you down the field. I love Cortland Sutton. To me, he's their number one receiver right now because Jerry Jeudy just has not proven that he can do it at the NFL level. They lost Tim Patrick early in the offseason to an ACL tear, so he's done for the season. But KJ Hamler, who is an interesting receiver, he's more of a smaller receiver, towards ACL in week 1 last year, can be a gadget guy. I look at him as a Tavon Austin type receiver, a guy that can be used in all kinds of situations. So I think with the RPO game, Sutton going down the field, Jeudy played in the slot on those plays across the middle. This offense can gain a ton of yardage, not to mention KJ Hamler, who is a burner, as I just mentioned. So this should be a fast group of wide receivers. So that's number one, just with their RPO game. They also have 2 great running backs. Javonte Williams, who was a rookie last year, broke out at a great rookie season. They got Melvin Gordon Jr. III behind him. So they got dual running backs. One thing I will say, Denver, Melvin Gordon's a good back. He is. Javonte Williams is a hell of a lot better. Stop splitting carries. Give the ball to Javonte Williams. Melvin Gordon should be brought in every third or fourth carry to give Williams a break. But Williams is the better running back at this point. It should not be 1A, 1B. It should be 1A, 1C because Javonte Williams is the game breaker. He is the better running back. And I will tell you this for free. He's a guy I would look into taking in fantasy because he will score touchdowns for this team. Mark my words. Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, I like the pair at running back. Offensive line, not great. Another offensive line that isn't great in this division. Garrett Bowles returns at left tackle. He's been solid there forever. Dalton Reisner is good. Lloyd Kushner Jr. III is new. They brought in Billy Turner at right tackle. He's played in Carolina. So it's not an overwhelming offensive line. They also got a rookie on that line. Russell Wilson's gotten sacked an average of 40 times a season in his 10 years in the NFL. That's on pace to break the record for the most sacks in the history of the NFL. Well, to think you're leaving Seattle and you're getting an better offensive line, that's just not true. We have to remember, Russell Wilson chose his destination. He had a no-trade clause. He could have picked anywhere. He looked around and picked Denver. He must believe it's going to be different here, but I look at the offensive line in Seattle. I look at the offensive line that he's going to have in Denver. They're both not great. They really aren't. There isn't brand names. It isn't an offensive line that's been built like Cincinnati's, like Kansas City, designed to help protect the quarterback. So his decision-making in choosing safety is a little questionable to me right now. Defensively, Randy Gregory comes in. They obviously lose Von Miller. Obviously, they traded him. Then he goes to the Buffalo Bills. So Gregory and DJ Jones at nose tackle, we're looking to get some looks. Bradley Chubb is also returning from ACL surgery. So we'll see what I think the two big names of this pass rush are Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. Gregory signed a 5-year, $80 million deal in the offseason from the Dallas Cowboys. He's had his ups and downs in his career. He's been suspended a number of times for breaking the league's anti-drug policy, while Chubb's been injured a number of times. So health is a key part of this pass rush for the Denver Broncos and keeping guys focused. The secondary, love parts of it. Pat Surtain II had a fantastic rookie season. He can lock down one side of the field. Justin Simmons at free safety. Paid like one of the best free safeties in football because he is. That's what he does. He's one of the best at the position. So Surtain, Simmons, great in the secondary. Kareem Jackson's getting a little older. Played in Houston for a long time. Now in Denver. So he's a little question mark. And their other corner, the right side corner, is Ronald Darby, who's bounced around. He's played in Buffalo. He's played in Philadelphia. He's played for the Dolphins. So a veteran guy that doesn't strike confidence in me. So we'll see with this. I like parts of this defense, but I do think, again, I don't think the Broncos are going to be as good as other people. I think Russell Wilson has gotten worse over the last number of years, not better. I don't think he'll improve that much this year in Denver. I don't love their offensive line. I think their defense has holes in it. So I don't expect big things from the Denver Broncos because I think there are better teams in this division, and not to mention they got a tough schedule. So Denver, although Denver makes big moves, they're swinging for the fences, hoping to get some production out of this team. I don't think they're going to need as much as people think. Los Angeles Chargers. The LA Chargers did not lose much this offseason. They lost Jared Cook, who was more of a problem than anything at tight end. They kept their coaches. They kept their general managers. They didn't lose any coordinators. But the Chargers lost their last game of the season last year to the Raiders, and they missed out in the playoffs. A big missed opportunity for this team with second-year quarterback Justin Herbert, and they looked at it and said, okay, that's enough. We are going to win some games next year. Well, in the offseason, they added definitely the best center available, also one of the best centers in football, in Corey Linsley. Corey Linsley has been protecting Aaron Rodgers for a number of seasons, hiking him the ball for over 10 years. Linsley is now hiking the ball to Justin Herbert. They gave Linsley the money in the offseason. He's experienced, but he's still playing at a high level. I don't mind the signing whatsoever. They brought in Sebastian Joseph Day from the Los Angeles Rams. So he's a veteran to play on that defensive line. He comes in and joins the fray with the likes. If you can imagine, on this defense, they have Sebastian Joseph Day. They got Joey Bosa. They brought in Khalil Mack in a trade with the Chicago Bears. They got some good. They also got Jerry Tillery, who's an underrated guy. They signed Kyle Van Noy from the New England Patriots. This defense is legit. Their linebackers are weak. They got Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma, who hasn't been a great pro. They got Troy Reeder, who was playing with the Rams and one of the worst in football. But as I mentioned, the Rams, their linebacking core is one of the worst positions. I think their worst position on their team. They won a Super Bowl. You can cover it up with really good teams. So for me, the X factor number one, Chargers. Can the defense come together? I like it up front. I look at their secondary. Derwin James, another strong safety who's just flat out elite. They signed J.C. Jackson from the New England Patriots. New England didn't want to pay him. He's coming over to the Chargers to play lockdown corner. Nobody has more interceptions over the last 4 years in the NFL than J.C. Jackson. They have Asante Samuel Jr., who's going into his second season. I think he's going to break out. They signed Bryce Callahan, who's played with the Chicago Bears for a long time. He still has game, if you ask me. I like their defense. I think it's going to be a top 10 defense in this league. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Joseph Day, they'll have enough guys to get pressure on that on offensive lines. I mentioned how Denver doesn't have a great offensive line so far, and neither do the Raiders. So, with that being said, you have a good pass rush, which most teams do in this division. It's going to be difficult for you to keep your quarterback upright. So, I like the defense. So that's X factor number one. Quarterback pressure, defense coming together. I think it will, and I think the secondary with Derwin James and J.C. Jackson should be special. On offense for Herbert, Herbert comes back for year 3. He has a very similar offense. Justin Jackson left. He was a depth running back. They still have Austin Eckler, Josh Kelly. They just recently signed Sony Michel. Keenan Allen returns as his primary receiver. They have Mike Williams back. They re-signed him in the offseason. He's got Joshua Palmer. He was a rookie last year. I think he'll have a breakout year. They did sign Gerald Everett to play the starting tight end. They do have Donald Parham Jr. to play tight end as well. So no new receivers. It's a similar offense to the one they had last year. It was an explosive offensive last year. Mike Williams can be a guy you throw the ball to down the field because he can just burn people, plus make tough catches. You have Keenan Allen, who's in the intermediate type routes, and is just one of the most technical receivers in the NFL. Eckler is a good all-purpose back when healthy, but you got depth. I mentioned Michel is their number 3 running back right now. Not a bad place to have. You also have Joshua Kelly behind him. Not to mention they drafted Isaiah Spiller out of the University of Texas A&M. So all that being said, their offensive line, left side is just so stout. They got Rashawn Slater, who they drafted out of Northwestern last year. Fantastic. Matt Filer, who is an all-pro. And they have Corey Linsley, who I mentioned they signed. The right side's not as strong, but I expect this offensive line to be good. I expect this offense to be good. And the Chargers are always everybody's preseason favorite. They love the Chargers. They got good stories. They got Justin Herbert. And this was even with Phillip Rivers back in the day where you go, well, the Chargers might go on a run. And they always seem to disappoint. I'll tell you what I think every team's going to do tomorrow. Wednesday, where I make predictions on each team, on each playoff team, on MVP, those type things. But I will say the Chargers have a stacked roster. Their roster is fantastic. They have a great quarterback. They got one of the best left tackles in all of football, and he's young. They got a great center. Derwin James is special. This team's good. This team's really good. Will that be enough to make the playoffs? We'll wait and see. But I like it's the best roster they've had in a long time in for the Chargers. They've had some good pieces along the way. They've had Antonio Gates, Phillip Rivers. They've had good teams, but I don't think they've had this loaded of a roster in a very long time. And that brings us to the team that's won the division the last 6 years, and that would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City had an offseason. I mean, it could have been worse. They could have lost Eric Bieniemy, their offensive coordinator, who should be a head coach in the NFL, but he's black, so he's not. But Kansas City had an offseason to remember, that's for sure. It started when they traded Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. They were negotiating with Tyreek Hill. He wanted a big deal, and they weren't willing to do it because they wanted to add to their offensive line. They wanted to make sure that the offensive line was good enough to protect Patrick Mahomes so that they could win a Super Bowl. So they told Tyreek Hill, you and your agent can go talk to teams, can seek a trade, and 2 teams in the AFC East were extremely interested, the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill said no way in hell to New York Jets because he was never going there. Dolphins interested him. He's now Tua Tagovailoa's best friend. He's no longer in Kansas City. So they lose him. They also lost the Honey Badger, really the leader of their defense, Tyrann Mathieu. And for agency, he goes back to Louisiana, where he's from, to play for the New Orleans Saints. He's gone. They also lost Melvin Ingram, also to the Miami Dolphins. So Kansas City lost some big pieces, for sure. But they added a lot as well. Before we get to what they added, I'm going to start with X Factor, and it ties into their offense. How does Patrick Mahomes look without Tyreek Hill for the first time in his career? Patrick Mahomes is starting a season without Tyreek Hill. He's had that security blanket. He's had the cheetah for his entire career, and you can't overlook that fact. Tyreek Hill is one of the most productive receivers in the NFL. The last 3 seasons, he's had 1,285 yards, 1,343, and then 1,250. He's extremely reliable. He can catch 8 to 10 touchdown receptions a year, and he doesn't drop the football, and he can get a 200-yard receiving game in his sleep. So how did they transition? What did they do with Tyreek Hill gone? Well, in the offseason, the Kansas City Chiefs added Juju Smith-Schuster from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really like this move. Juju, his stock is so low because he's been playing with Big Ben Roethlisberger, who is basically Mother Teresa at quarterback because he's so battered and he can't throw the ball. They can't throw the ball down the field. Juju did drop some passes, but I think he's going to have a bounce-back year for Kansas City. He's playing with a new quarterback. He's going to be reinvigorated and proving to everybody that he's still one of the best receivers in the NFL. They also added Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who departed from Green Bay. He is now in Kansas City, and I think he will be the new deep threat for Patrick Mahomes now that Tyreek Hill is gone. He does not have the speed of Tyreek Hill, but he can still play really good football. Aaron Rodgers didn't trust him. Didn't trust him in Green Bay, hardly would throw him the ball, but I think he has some talent. Aaron Rodgers would only throw the ball to Devontae Adams anyway, so I think he'll get a fresh opportunity here. Mecole Hardman is still with the Chiefs. He's not the number 1. He's not the number 2. He's more of a gadget receiver. They also drafted Sky Moore in the 2nd round. He's a guy that had a lot of people liking him out of college. We'll see what he can do at the NFL level. So Sky Moore, Juju, Scantling, Mecole Hardman. They also dropped unsigned free agent Justin Ross was added out of Clemson. And not to mention they have Travis Kelce, who is still one of the best tight ends in football. Another X factor. Travis Kelce's 33 years old. Still playing at such a high level. All-Pro last year, Pro Bowler. How long can he keep doing this? How long can he keep playing the way he is? So my X factor is health. I mean, he hasn't had injury problems yet. But as you get older, how many hits can you take? I worry a little bit about that going into the season with Travis Kelce. X factor, another X factor. Kansas City has the best offensive line since Mahomes arrived. Goes this way. Left tackle Orlando Brown Jr., who they traded with the Baltimore Ravens, who's been a Pro Bowler. Joe Tooney at left guard, who they signed big money from the New England Patriots. Creed Humphrey, who they drafted in the second round out of Oklahoma. Trey Smith, who they drafted in the second round of the draft. And Andrew Wiley, who's been in Kansas City for his entire career. Best offensive line Mahomes has had, bar none, in his pro career. And the Chiefs are finally prioritized keeping him upright, keeping him healthy. They let Tyreek Hill go so that they could get a great offensive line. I think it's a smart decision. I think it's the way to win in this league. You need a great left tackle. You need good guys protecting your prized possession. I applaud Andy Reid. I applaud the management of the Chiefs for recognizing this and seeing that we can still win a Super Bowl with lesser receivers, but a great offensive line. Defense. Defense is less as impressive. Up front, you have Chris Jones, who is getting older by the season and is less impressive. Frank Clark is still on this team. I don't love him. Nick Bolton is really the guy for me that kind of flashes. I think he had a great year last year at outside linebacker. He can still get some sacks as well. Chris Jones needs to have a productive year. Frank Clark hasn't been productive since leaving Seattle. Has been more productive and getting in trouble off the field. But that's their pass rush. I don't love. It's not a strength of their team. We'll see what these two guys can do. Corner, they got Trent McDuffie, who they drafted out of Washington. He was great in college. They brought over Justin Reed from the Houston Texans. He's a veteran that comes in. Juan Thornhill's been there forever. They also have L'Jarius Sneed. So I look at McDuffie. I look at Bolton, who's a young player. They have some young guys that need to produce right off the bat, or this defense is going to have some trouble. But I trust in this team to do it. They added Carlos Dunlap for depth. He's a guy that can come in and give you some pass rush options. They're a young team. They got Butker and Townsend, one of the best kicking duos in the NFL. Their offensive line is as best it's ever been with Patrick Mahomes. They also have George Karlaftis, who they drafted, and that was their first-round pick. He will look to be a good pass rusher. He's a rookie that needs to produce. I think McDuffie needs to be good at corner because they lost Tre'Davious Ward in the offseason in free agency. However, with all that being said, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. And I'll make an early prediction before Wednesday. I think the Chiefs are going to win the division for the 7th year in a row. Chargers are really good. They are. They got a good offensive line as well. They got great pieces. I still think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. I realize the NFL Network put out their 100 best players, and Tom Brady was number one, which is asinine. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, period, end of story. Herbert is not. He's not better than him. If I did take a quarterback for the next decade, I'd still take Patrick Mahomes. He's 26 fucking years old. He's not 30. I don't know what happened to people not loving Mahomes. He doesn't get the respect that he deserves. Kansas City has been one of the classes of the NFL. They continue to deliver year after year after year. I don't expect that to change. The Kansas City Chiefs will win the AFC West. Teams loaded up to compete with Kansas City. They got pieces to say, hey, we can hang with this team. We can win big games. Well, it's ultimately going to fail because the end result will be the same as it always is. Kansas City will be the winner of this division. That's 8 division previews, if you can believe it. Wow, we got through it. I enjoyed doing it. I feel much more prepared to start the season, so I thank all of you for that. Coming tomorrow, we have our top 32 NFL quarterbacks. Top 32 NFL quarterbacks. Where does everybody land? Where does Tom Brady land? Who's number one? Is it Mahomes? We'll get to that tomorrow on the show as we recap other things. We'll talk about tennis tomorrow. We'll talk about any other news. That's just part of the show. Then Wednesday, we got prediction day. Who's winning each division? Who's making all my playoff teams, all 7 playoff teams from each conference. We'll reveal that on Wednesday. Over-unders on Friday. We'll preview the Bills and Rams Thursday afternoon. Lots coming this week here into the point. Not to mention trying to book Matt Wright for once every couple weeks, maybe once a week every Friday. That would be nice to have him this year. I love talking to him. He brings more to the podcast, and he's a great gambler. I think he's better than me. I want to end the show today by saying happy birthday to Dirk, my child, my little miniature dash hound who is 2 years old today. She makes my life better. I can always go home to a dog that's happy to see me. It was a great decision to adopt her on November 3rd of 2020. And I'm grateful for it every day. Happy birthday to Dirk. And I'm going to go spend the rest of the day with her and hope that she enjoys it. Whatever you do on this Labor Day holiday, I hope you guys all enjoy it. Enjoy the day off. Enjoy it with your family. Enjoy watching sports. Enjoy it in solitude like myself. Do whatever you have to do. But enjoy it. We'll be back tomorrow because I enjoyed it so much today. I'd like to come back. Till then, this is To The Point.